Hello, everyone, and welcome to our program, Black and Queer in Media and Entertainment. My name is Joanna, and I'm a Programming and Outreach Coordinator with the Anne Arundel County Public Library, and I will be your host for the program today. We are so excited to be able to host this program today in partnership with Annapolis Pride, and programs like this are brought to you by the Anne Arundel County Public Library Foundation. To support events like this one, please consider honoring Anne Arundel County Public Library's 100th anniversary by donating $100 for 100 years. And you can learn more at www.aacpl.net/100years. During today's program, we'll have some time at the end to answer your questions. Please feel free to share anything you would like to ask our presenters in the Q&A box. And now I would like to introduce our moderator for the program today, Chris Paley.
Oh, thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Anne Arundel County Public Library System, and thank you all who have joined us today. I'm very proud and honored to have these friends with me today to talk about this subject matter, this topic, which is never ending, which is golden, so to speak. It's a rainbow of colors, not only figuratively, but literally, because we bring so much to the table, and we hope you will enjoy our red cup. In honor of Jada Pinkett Smith, I have a red cup because it's happy hour somewhere, I think. So there you go. Introduce all of our panelists and have them say a few words about themselves as well. So as I'm looking at my screen, we're going to start with the lovely and talented Pryor Vane, who will reveal herself now. Hello, Rain.
And also turn the mic on would help.
Subtleties.
I'm Rain Pryor. I'm an actress, writer, a DEI strategist and consultant. Earning right now my degree at Cornell University. And I'm glad to be here. I'm honored to be here.
Okay, thank you very much, Rain. And now going in my lower left quadrant, the talented Broadway composer and musician, Micah Young. How are you, Micah?
Hi, Chris. It's good to see you. Hi, everybody. I'm a Broadway music director, pianist, composer, whatever the job is, but I'm a pianist. I went to Manhattan School of Music here in New York. I've lived in New York for 18 years, and I'm so excited to take part in the discussion tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. And last but certainly not least is Terry Franklin, who is a lawyer. So if you have an issue, go to him quickly. Pro bono, right?
All free, everything. Wait, those are my partners.
Just for this 1 hour, 60 minutes. Who's also a board member of OutFest, used to be the chairman, now he's a board member, and so many other things, which he will share with us right now.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's so fun to be on here. It's like, I don't know, Hollywood Squares or something.
Right.
So Chris is right. I do trust and estate litigation. So I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 30 plus years. And I also am involved in a bunch of creative projects, including one that involves uncovering the story of my ancestors back to the 1840s, my great-great-great-great-grandmother's escape from slavery. And as Chris said, I'm also actively involved in lots of LGBTQ activities, including OutFest, on which I'm a board member, and in various diversity activities. Today, I received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Chambers and Partners for my work in diversity and inclusivity. So we're all here for the right reasons.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry. And I just want to let everybody know that with the magic of the virtual world, we are literally bi-coastal today because Terry is in California, Rain and I are both in Maryland, and Micah is in New York. It's kind of the miracle of my We love it. So with the first question, I'm going to just address something which I think is relatively simplistic, but it could take us the whole 60 minutes, which is 2020, 2021. For yourselves, personally and professionally, what is the same? What has changed? Boom, bang, pow. And we'll start with Rain.
Oh, well, it is Hollywood Squares.
X gets that square.
Right. You know, I think what's different is that I feel like all of a sudden my circle became smaller and really important to have, and being close. Like I enjoyed having time with my child that I never would have gotten this kind of, one-on-one kind of, possibility. And in all of this, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm a cancer survivor now, within that year, and also had a heart stent put in at the beginning of right before the pandemic. So all this health stuff, like, just, I feel different about the world and about friendships and family. So yeah, that's kind of.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Micah?
Yeah, I mean, that just hearing that is inspiring. I think a lot of it has been for all of us the cleaning house, right? What's the I'm gonna Marie Kondo. If you don't love it, get
Right,
off
right.
of it.
Right.
Does this candle bring me joy? Thank you. And we've been doing that with relationships in our personal lives. I think professionally, what hasn't changed is I've always been a mercenary freelancer, an independent contractor. You know, I'll do the gig, I'll play the gig, I'll play the show, and now it was like, great. How do we do? As many times in my life, I've had to reinvent what I do because a show will close or the gig will end, and you are left with the next step. But personally, it's been a roller coaster of relationships that you now have, like you said, Rain, more time to maybe examine or really actually talk about the things that you just keep kicking down the road in your life. And we all had more time, I think, to really invest.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah, for me, because I, not on a sort of a performance schedule, but just on the lawyer schedule, everything was like, life is like go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden it was like March, and a lot of things were just closed, like courts are closed. So, for a lot of people who do transactional work or who like draft trusts, this was a good time to keep doing work. For me, there was actually a quiet period. That was a forced quiet period that I'd never really had before. And it was, I guess I'm fortunate that I stopped at the beginning and was like, okay, at some point this is going to end, and let's try to be better where we come out of it than the way we went into it. And so I was trying to be very mindful about, hearing myself and trying to see myself as I can be, instead of in the world, because usually I'm always thinking, oh, how does somebody think of me? How are they thinking? How is this person looking at me? And so I was finally able to sort of be in my space, and happily with my husband, we were happy together in this space, and it gave us time to bond in a way. So I feel really fortunate that I had a really good COVID experience. I know lots of people didn't, and I don't. I'm really appreciative of the fact that I didn't have to suffer a lot, although I know that people around me did. So I'm just grateful.
Well, to the point of why we're here too is that Black and media and entertainment. So because of COVID, because of a necessary involuntary requirement on out of our immediate persons and all of those people within our surroundings, within our circle, whether they were large or small, we had to spend more time with ourselves. We had to spend more time creating for ourselves. We had to spend more time watching what other people create.
Yeah.
So within the course of this time span, have you all noticed anything, because it's all about representation when it comes down to it, about the representation of the Black and or queer environment out there in a world in which we all had to deal with this same pandemic? It wasn't something, one cannot say it's HIV AIDS. Oh, well, that's the gay plague. One cannot say it's sickle cell anemia. Oh, well, that's Black people. One cannot say it's you name it, that you can segment toward one specific nationality or religion or what have you to deal with. This is something we all had to deal with, emotionally, spiritually, and certainly socially. So what have you all noticed from the inside out as how the world has perceived it? And do you think it's changed any within this year as well? And I'll start the other way around with Terry first.
Well, I think we all saw, in the wake of George Floyd's killing, an apparent enthusiasm for embracing these stories and for making sure that people are having more representation. I was on Zoom call after Zoom call with organizations that were, writing responses and statements and pushing forward agendas and, different universities and different organizations and institutions. And I think I've seen increases in, at least I know people who are getting deals that I'm seeing watched, announced in the papers. One of our good friends, Elegance Bratton, who lives there in Baltimore with Chester Gordon, has got a deal where he's going to be making his movie, The Inspection, and he's got Gabrielle Union is starring in it, and Bokeem Woodbine. So I see things are happening, and I hope that, I think what's probably going to happen, as seems to be happening with a lot of other things, that there'll be a backlash. So I'm hoping that people take advantage of this opportunity in this moment and get as many deals as they can. And I hope that these companies that promise that they're going to be standing up and pay, aren't just paying lip service, that they're going to dole that money out, and that they don't stop, or at least that we take advantage of it while we can, because we've already seen, the polls that say that the numbers of people who were supportive of Black Lives Matter in January of 2020, at least on the Republican side, was it was here, and then for George Floyd it went higher, and now it's lower than it was before George Floyd was killed. So there are people who are saying, "Oh, what y'all Black people got too much. You need to stop this." So we need to take advantage of this moment while we can, I think.
Micah?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about our conversation prior to this, which was we were talking about privilege, and I think you mentioned privilege, Terry, about where we're all sitting and what do we have at our disposal. And the analogy that goes around a lot is that a rising tide raises all boats, or we're all in this together. We're all in this storm together. But I think the other side of it is we're all in different boats. Some of us have yachts. And some of us are in like little kayaks, and it's like, how do you weather the storm when you're in a little one-man canoe versus the yacht that has a yacht in it? Is that the thing? But from my experience, living in New York, and I think it's a bit of a powder keg where everyone's been sitting with these emotions for many generations and many years, and it's so multifaceted, and trying to be an ally to my Black friends who are feel very differently maybe than I do, or not that I do, but that their experience is different, and trying to be as authentic as possible without saying, "Oh yeah, no, I know how you feel." Like, how do we approach this authentically, and how do we do it when the backlash, if it's not maybe what Terry was saying, but I feel now that we're all in this place of super correct PC, being very correct in how we try to approach things, because we don't want to be wrong and we don't want to be in any way offensive, because we're all trying our best to do the right thing.
Right.
So that's sometimes where I sit, where I'm like, I don't know what to say. That's why I'm here tonight. It's like, I don't know what to say. I shouldn't say it. And sometimes I say nothing because there's nothing I can say.
It's interesting, Micah, what you're saying, because I kind of feel that way. I feel like it's like we're in a pendulum. So the pendulum is swinging all the way over to this side right now because it needs to. Like we need to get all the stuff out. We need to get the Black, the brown, the LGBTQIA. We need to get it all out, how we're supposed to handle XYZ, and then we can all come back and find that lovely middle ground where everyone can feel more authentic, right? So just like the questions, like I'm watching everything happen, in the industry, in terms of like, I can't audition for certain roles anymore. My dream was to play, and I did when I was younger, Anita in West Side Story. I can't do that because I'm not Latina you know what I mean? So like things that I wanted to do, or I'm seeing like, okay, so it's going to that side for now, and then it'll swing back. Because even my voice, as someone who is a light-skinned Black woman, it's like, I'm not it. It's like, I'm not the it factor at the moment, and it's very interesting to me watching, but I wasn't it even when it was okay, because I didn't look X, Y, and Z, So here we are trying to find a balance and realizing like the conversation of diversity, equity, inclusion is very big on everyone's platform, and how do we address that in a way that is authentic and doesn't feel like tokenism, but it takes a token to make it happen. It takes a token to make it authentic. So we're going to go through this upheaval until we find, like I said, till we come back to the middle and find the balance.
Right. And it's uncomfortable, those moments when you feel like you're really putting your heart out there and trying to do the best and do something that's constructive, but it's not necessarily perceived that way. And I think it's just about trying to be sensitive and being open and appreciative and vulnerable, and recognizing that none of us has all the answers.
Right.
But it's not easy.
No, I think
No,
that's
it's
so
not.
true. Oh, go ahead, Rain.
No, it's not. I was going to say, no, it's not easy. An interesting conversation we had, because I'm part of the leadership and Schusterman fellowship, and part of a conversation we just had yesterday was about having to, when you build the table and you invite people to the table, you can't just invite the same voices to the table that match yours. You have to invite also the voices you don't want to hear to the table, because there's value in that.
Right.
There's value in for someone who's against, whether it's, they're against defunding the police. Well, let's have that conversation. Let's be uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable, people. And
Right.
because that's how we're going to grow. If I get to talk to someone that's different from me, then I get to learn something if I allow myself to stay open and be present for that conversation, and not so caught up in what I want to say and how I want to get them to join, my side.
Yeah,
Sometimes
we're so polarized. It's hard to find those spaces where you can even, I think people bring so many of their biases and assumptions about how communicating with someone who disagrees with them is going to react, and so it's like
absolutely
scary.
You're on to something about the discomfort, and I was just reading Brene Brown, who deals with vulnerability, and that
yes,
he says if you're not uncomfortable, we're not doing our job.
right,
And it doesn't mean that we have to make everything, for shock value uncomfortable, but new ideas that challenge your beliefs, that make you question. And now with all of this, I'm circling around the recent, in Broadway and in theater, it's like if you're not exactly that ethnicity, like you were saying about Anita.
right.
How many West Side Story productions have I been in or been a part of where, you've got the Jets and then the Sharks are every every color in the rainbow.
Or the rainbow, exactly.
They're not Latino. They're not
Right.
specifically Puerto Rican. It's like, well, they read on stage, and that's what the casting is about. Was about then. Now the pendulum has swung where it's like, well, if you don't have proof of certain parts of your actual self, but then
Right.
I have to. But then the devil's advocate, the criticism to me is, well, isn't that acting? I mean, if you can act the role, and if you're
Right.
the best person, but then we can't.
But that's the whole thing, right? That's the whole both hands. We're sitting in it at the moment. Which way are we really gonna go to find out like who can play what now and do certain, you know what I mean? Like we're so in this weird, we're in this weird uncomfortable, and it is uncomfortable vortex of like, we got to keep it, black, literally black and white.
Right. And it's hard because from the LGBTQ standpoint, and whether or not you can play the role of someone who's gay or not, I have daughters who are actors, and sometimes I'll have a conversation with my daughter who is straight, but she'll say, well, shouldn't the best person really be chosen for a role regardless of whether they happen to be gay or not, for a gay role, for example? And I agreed with her, and I understood that, and I appreciate the hard work that she's put into her craft and her ability to play the role of someone who happens to be a lesbian. But I also know that there have been people who've been kept out of roles for so long, and I want to make sure that somehow those people have a chance to be seen for who they are. And I appreciate both standpoints. Yeah, I think it's about having compassion for every human being, every individual, instead of trying to put us into boxes. I know we need our boxes to help us as unifiers, to develop some unity with others to move forward. But ultimately, we're all individual human beings. And if we can recognize our respective value and bring that to every interaction with everybody we deal with, then maybe that's when you start moving to being able to see the difference, appreciate the difference, but not be bound by it.
Right. I agree with that. And I also agree that when we get to a place, which I'm hoping we get to, where we can watch TV and it's not obvious to my, 13-year-old that, doesn't it seem every week some star is coming out? Like it seems that way, that didn't before, like young people. And it's like it's not publicized and it's not, oh my God, the first or the this or the that. It's just like you can watch and just see the kaleidoscope of humanness that we all bring to the table and, and function as artists.
That's the dream.
I should be able to go to the best. I should be able to go to the best person, but I also understand the need right now. Like I said, we have to swing over this way to get back to the middle. We have to kind of go to the extreme to delve in and get out and make sure that real voices that have been marginalized and disenfranchised get heard for a change. The
invisible people need to be seen, they haven't even been seen,
I was having this, maybe it was our discussion when we met before, but I'm thinking about those stories that are being told. It's like Will and Grace and Modern Family did good, although I still have issues with the way the characters were portrayed. But now we have Schitt's Creek, where what I love, the whole point of the show is no one cares. No one cares that they're in this relationship. No one cares that their neighbor is Black. It's not even a discussion.
Right.
Which is one step beyond this. I'm the gay character, and that's a focal point of this whole episode, because being gay, like, I heard an interview recently where, like, well, today in 1960s interview, it's going to be this Republican and this man who was gay, and like that was the whole conversation, the Republican and the gay man, and the whole interview. He's gay. Isn't that fascinating?
But that's so weird because I know gay Republicans.
There's your twofer. There you go.
Cone of all people.
It's the evolution. It's like the evolution of human thought and human progress, that we had to have a moment where we had to have where the only gays we could see were Paul Lynde in the center square,
right?
And as a kid, I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I knew there was something about him that I could relate to, and that I was like seeing something there. And there, and when I watch TCM, I see all these old movies where there are these tropes of really unpleasant images of stereotyped, slightly effeminate gay men, and it sort of turns my stomach. But I realize that had to happen in order for us to be where we are today. And I wouldn't have wanted to be this gay Black man at any other point in history. I can tell you that. And I just have to keep working for it to be better for the people who come after us. And the young kids today don't even think about the stuff that I worried about.
Right.
Maybe that's
there was this interview I saw. Oh, go ahead, Micah.
I think that might be the punchline to this whole event, this whole evening, which is to say that here we are having this very nuanced discussion about the finer points of sexual representation and race representation, when back in the day you were fighting for like just basic, I mean, we're still fighting for some basic things, but like, gay marriage and Stonewall, like there were so many things that came before, and now we're here, and that's
to not get arrested and thrown in jail, for being gay.
1957 or wherever, exactly.
I mean, I think what's amazing to me, and I'm going to sound like a dumb Dora, that's what I call it at the moment, is because it's like when you hear someone say, like my husband, when he says, I don't see color, and I'm starting to understand, like at first I got really offended because I'm like, what do you mean? You're married to a brown woman, like, but for myself, I started to understand as I equate to how I grew up. Like I grew up with Hollywood Lawn. I grew up with, was my babysitter. Like I lived in Tahiti where every 9th child is raised to be a woman. So the idea of transgender it's not something that I ever saw as foreign, or not to be so as it is now, like the topic of our conversation, or, you know, she, her, they, them, like all this stuff that we're going through. And it's like, I've had that moment, like my husband, of like, I don't see that, but I see that other people see that. I see that other people have the issue. I see that where we are today, again, goes back to that pendulum has to swing over here, and it becomes an uproar till it's really nothing. It's just people wanting to live their authentic lives.
Right.
Like there's nothing, that's how, in my mind, we should all be, like, in terms of our entertainment and what we create. It should be a representation of this authenticity and this world that we want to be in. But if you know the history of what came before, then you understand like why there was a Gone with the Wind, you know what I mean?
Right.
Why there was Grease. Like I heard that was a thing, like people wanted, you know, to cancel because of the like rape culture attitude, and very misogynistic, you know. But you have to look at the history and when these things took place and what was going on that was acceptable then.
It's
You know, we
context.
couldn't, yeah, everything. And that's, I think sometimes we miss that. We miss context, and someone says the wrong thing and we go and we want to attack them, instead of, I think the best thing is, it's a teaching moment. Let's not attack people anymore. Let's try to teach them about themselves, you know?
I totally agree with you. I have to say, my husband was roommates with Holly Woodlawn, so we'll have to have a little conversation
We are,
offline
because
about that.
I bet he knows my mom then. Oh my God.
Hey, Jeffrey, we'll talk later
The family
about Holly
thing.
Woodlawn.
Love it.
He's watching, actually he's watching. But you were also talking about, you know, that sense of, you know, not seeing color, which again, I understand where it comes from. It's a desire to say, I don't want to be caught up in the negative stuff that goes along with that, because I don't buy into that. But the thing is, if we truly say I don't see color, then at least for some people, that means that everybody is following an American, you know, that what I see is people who look like the American, or the me that I see the world as. And I know when I sometimes think about how I'm one of those people who figured out how to negotiate those spaces, predominantly white spaces, my whole life, you know, Northwestern, Harvard, you know, law firms, all of that. So I know I'm good at that. This is what I have done my whole life. But I know there are lots of people who said, why do I know what to, I don't need to do that. I don't need to try to find those ways to conform in terms of my appearance, or, you know, my hair, or any of these things, in order to be valued as a person. And they have the right to stand up in ways that I never had the comfort to do, you know, outfits that I couldn't wear, and they should be going to those offices too. And for a lot of people, a lot of people will look at them and go, well, I don't see color, but those things are just too much. You know what I mean? Instead of truly seeing the human being who happens to be enveloped in a color, or in a hair, or in a whatever it is, you know?
I've always wondered about this term myself, I don't see color, and I always felt uncomfortable about it, and I wasn't sure why. And then I think part of it was that I thought, well, so if you did see color, there'd be a problem? Is that what you're saying? Because I see color all the time, but I don't let it stop me from finding a person attractive, or from loving my family, or loving my adopted family. It's just, I always see color. If I'm describing somebody across the street, then, and now my mind does go into a place, well, should I say the race, or should I not say the race? But I'm thinking, I want to be efficient. If I say it's that guy over there across the street, and there's only one black guy, and I mean the black guy, I'm going to say it's that guy across the street. The black guy. In
the red hat, the one with the red hat, you know.
I'm going to say that. It's not being racial, it's not being prejudicial, it's not being, I don't know, it's just being specific. And I think from an actor's point of view, from an artist's point of view, you try to be specific, because the more you're specific, the more hopefully it hits the general of what we're trying to reach to people. And in all of your different capacities, you are artists who are trying to do something specific, which will reach a larger audience.
And I think then that brings us into In the Heights, because that takes us right there, which is, for someone who has met Lin-Manuel and seen his show, I know his authenticity. So yes, was maybe in his mind, was there a lapse of the use of more, melanated Afro Latinas and Latinos? Yes. But if you know him, you know that this was about he really was trying to do a representation, and he wasn't trying to whitewash like the Afro-Latina community. And so I think that's the difference. The conversation, I think, sometimes has to be like, okay, maybe, next time we can do a little more better with our authenticity, but know the person where they're coming from. Like, he's really coming from a very authentic, true, I'm creating art for my children's children and your children, because look at Hamilton. Look what he did in Hamilton,
And to me, as you said, it's the authenticity. And this was a show that I went to see with my ex-wife and our two daughters when it was on Broadway years ago. We loved the show. We cried through it. We lived it, and then I would drive around and I'd be playing the CD for like years and years and years. So I've been waiting for this movie to come out for years. I emailed my daughter she texted me from New Orleans the other day to say she cried when she watched it too. So we also have this attachment to it. And I imagine that if there had been a really bad pushback to the stage play in terms of its lack of greater representation of darker skinned people, that he would have adjusted and made, changes, and it would have shown up in this film. But I think probably, there probably weren't a lot of darker people who were going to see that, unfortunately, because the barriers to access to this kind of amazing performance, it's so expensive. So, a lot of the people who should have seen it probably couldn't see it.
Right.
And I think we all have evolved so that at the time, before a year ago, this probably would have been like, wow, look at this beautiful representation. This is amazing. But after last year, we know that it's not enough. We need to have more representation. Right? It's magnified. So I bet if it had come out before George Floyd was killed, it would have had a completely different reception.
But do you find people, I feel like that right now, where everyone right now is in a place of wanting to be upset about something, or it's we're all very easily offended. And so rather than celebrating the movie, people, I'm curious, Rain, your thoughts on this, because people who are quick to criticize, and that's been critics have been part of our story
absolutely
since the beginning. But to say like, well, it wasn't Latin enough. Well, it wasn't enough. It wasn't blank enough.
Right.
Or the other one is you can't say that. That's not appropriate. That's not okay. It's like, well, thinking about comedy and like jokes being, if we're talking earlier about comics, it's like, how do you square that, and what is okay and what's not? And it's like, again, going back to context.
I think like I said, we're in that era. We're in this weird, like, we have to go over here to the extreme and watch our P's and our Q's, and I'm probably offending, an XYZ in there. So it's like, because I said P's and Q's, but that's where we're at. And I think we have to be, like I said, we have to be there to dissect this. And I think it has to get ridiculous in order for it to flip, where we go, oh my God, this is getting too out of hand. Because my whole life, when you get told you're not Black enough, and now you're really not Black enough. Right. Like, I'm just not Black enough. I'm not even in fashion. Like, it can't, it's like even my Black is out. It's like,
you're the wrong Black, Rain.
I am. Let me tell you.
Speaking of not seeing color, like thinking about casting, and we all know that, like, the minute you walk out on stage, you probably see a gender, even if it's not the gender at birth, but you see a gender, you see a skin color, and you see an age. You can probably guess this is a 25-year-old woman or a 65-year-old man of we guess at ethnicity. I mean, that's kind of how we do see color, and in a visual, I struggle with this because as a visual art form, you can't do a colorblind South Pacific.
Right.
Can you? I mean, if the character's supposed to be
No, because Asian Pacific Islanders need to be
and she's got to fight her own racism. I mean, there's racism as part of that story, so it's like
exactly.
How do you, or pick a story where it's like it's kind of integral to our story that these characters have these colors, ethnicities, differences, so that they can.
Although
right. Go ahead. Sorry.
It just makes it interesting to see how, as we evolve, how we can adapt the art. Because I'm not watching the new Anne Boleyn piece. That's, I think, the BBC. There's something on British TV, but there's a black English woman, who's playing the role of who's playing the lead role, and people are like, "You can't have a black woman playing that role, queen." And yes, she could. And, as someone pointed out, she's described as olive-skinned, and there are green olives and there are black olives, and we don't truly know exactly, what color she was. And I think we will become more comfortable over time with figuring out other ways to represent. But I agree with you. Like, how do you do South Pacific today and not cast Asian people? But should you even be showing South Pacific because it's problematic in other ways?
Because of the context and stuff they say. Right.
I watched Raisin in the Sun last night, which, I remember how beautiful it was, but, it was of its time. So there's sexism, and there's, treatment, brutality of children, things that we wouldn't tolerate today.
Right.
And yet the story is resonant and connects us to, these eternal understandings about what it means to be human. And so I think we just have to be a little more compassionate with our art, with our creators, and with ourselves, and I guess it's somewhere between Rita Moreno's "Not Now, Give More Time," and where she could say, yeah, this is the time to look at this, although I understand what Lin-Manuel had in his heart, which was to try to create a beautiful representation.
It's funny with the Rita Moreno comment. This is how I took it. You have to understand, again, it's a different generation. It's a generation of art and theater that she came from. So she's thinking in terms of her know-how, even though she reflects that the world's changed and in this new era that she's in, and one day at a time. And it's a new thing where they have, a lesbian daughter and, the whole thing, like the conversations are happening. She's aware, but she's also a different generation. And it reminds me of like when my grandmother said, about one time she was like, oh, when Obama became president, I say it in my show, I'm so happy for your people. Like she didn't mean it like I'm separate from, but it's her generation and the view of a lens that she loves me. This woman loves me, but you have to understand people's backgrounds, where they come from, why things get said. Like we just went through 4 or 5 years of an oppressive vocabulary being thrown at us daily, of every ism of everybody, and it was very painful for us. And then George Floyd happened, and then that was more painful, and then more rioting and more anger. And so, the volcano is erupting. We're now in the lava flow. So it has to flow, and then it gets hard and new things get planted. Right? So we're in that mode. I'm waiting for it to get planted.
Mm-hmm.
It's
hot.
You're making me think about how like art imitates life, and now we're in a place where thinking about the forward motion of progress being, whether it's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner or I'm a huge Trekkie, and it was like the first interracial kiss on cameras between Uhura and Kirk, black woman and white man. Oh heavens, it's like the earth will break, and the earth keeps spinning and we keep going. And so I'm just having these thoughts as I'm listening to you, that like we're moving forward with art being at the time maybe shocking for the better, because I think South Pacific, aside from the timing of it, the You've Got to Be Carefully Taught was such a powerful moment. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I guess now it all seems, I don't want to say passe, but it's like, oh yeah, that's been done. We've shown, I guess, that we've come farther than that.
Right.
But we're almost at the point where we're going to have to go to questions, I think. But this has been the best. I think I'm the best host ever because all I did was say, "And here you go."
We haven't let you say a word, Chris.
I'm so sorry.
I despise it.
Let Chris talk. I didn't know.
Yeah, right.
I didn't get that memo.
But I do want to get this one thing out there before we do go to the Q&A. It's just that along the lines of what you just said, Micah, I was just reading an interview with Wilson Cruz, who's on the newest iteration of Star Trek Discovery, and he's saying that it's the queerest Star Trek ever because he's in a love relationship with Anthony Rapp, who's Broadway roots, and also there's a transgender, non-binary definition, a couple that's on there too. And he's saying this is just so amazing, and he feels honored that he was on My So-Called Life, and he was the first. And although it was sort of I think, described in the article, because he said he wasn't openly gay when he played this openly gay character. But during the course of this one season, he came out to his father and he was thrown out just like he was thrown in the episode. But one of the things that he brought up, and I'd like you guys to sort of touch on this if possible, it's just from all of your backgrounds and your capacities as professionals. Rain, you're an actress, you're a writer, and you also direct. And Micah, you're a composer and you're a vocal coach, and Terry, among other things, you're a board member of a film festival. So you all make decisions of an artistic, in the artistic realm, that ultimately are about the best art that you could possibly find. But as you all have been referencing, in our current day and age, there's other aspects that come into your decision making, which is that, okay, I want to choose the best person for this part, but perhaps if I have a person of color who's as good as this person who's white, or this person who's overtly gay is as good a singer as this person who's straight, then should I or should I not? How do I gauge this? Because another article I read was the character in Love, Victor, based on Love, Simon, is a straight actor, and he's been getting a lot of crap from both gay and straight people about playing this character. One aspect is like a gay person should play a gay character. Then it comes back to, but they're actors. If
Right.
we're actors, what are we allowed to play? What are we not allowed to play? When back in the day, we had Jesus, who's Jeffrey Hunter, who's supposedly born in the Middle East. So that would be there was some comic who said, well, he'd be the only white man who was ever born in the Middle East. And yes, indeed, that would have been a miracle. So how have you guys dealt with this in your individual capacities?
So so I'm directing a piece now, but it's an African-American piece by an African-American writer. And, you know, he is a gay writer, but he didn't write for a gay audience. So it's like, I think what we have to do is just keep creating. And in that creation, we add the different elements and voices. So we can't go based on what has been, because what has been is the issue, right? So now we get to create new content. And that new content has all these different voices in it. That's what I was saying. There's going to come a time where we're not going to notice, you know, someone or something not being, because it will be out of our reference. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it will all just be there for us. And so I think as a content creator and a writer, you know, for me, it's like in the series that I'm creating for Fried Chicken and Latkes, you know, I'm creating a distinct voice because someone like me hasn't been. I don't see Black Jewish people on television. I haven't. But in my eyes, if I'm creating if I'm creating these characters of different things, I'm not beholden to it. I'm going to have to find a, a brown skinned girl to play this character because it's a black and do you know what I mean? Like I'm going to find, but I also know I can't cast a blonde hair and blue eyed actress. Like, so I think you have to be realistic in your roles, but I think the roles and the way we create and creatively go about things is going to change. We're not going, okay, he has to be played by someone who's black, unless it's historical, unless it's a life experience we're trying to mold. Am I making sense at all? Like in that creation, all of us are going to come, we're going to find that and I think we are doing that. I mean, I would pretty much assume that you are, Micah, and you're creative, if you're making music, and playing, right?
Maybe think of some of those phrases from writing classes where, you want to write what you know, but don't necessarily write about yourself. You're not, we're not that interesting. Is one of the arguments, like write from those experiences, those human emotional experiences. But if we always, it's that how do I say? It's that universe. And trying to find the words here too is that universality of the common experience, so that I can be a part of a story that is a musical like Waitress, or a story that takes place. I mean, a story that takes place in during Hamilton, or I worked on Spring Awakening, which is expressionistic German, and I personally don't need to be living in those time periods to understand the situations of those stories, right? An issue came up, for example, Waitress. I had a friend who was on the team, is a guy, and he was let go of the job because they wanted an all-female writing team, all-female creative team. And I mixed feelings about that because he had been with it, he knew the show, he was great in the show, he was a great guy, but he wasn't a woman. So I don't know if that's the pendulum swinging. I don't know if there was someone better that took the, it's very confusing that way. So
because that's where we need to go. It's that extreme. We're doing that. Like me getting added to boards. I've been added to 3 boards. I know it's a token ad. I know it, but I have to be there to make it change.
Right. Well, you have to use that opportunity while you're in that space to not allow yourself to be used as a token.
Exactly.
Even if that was the reason why you were put in that place, you now have the opportunity, and some would say the responsibility, to then make that change, and that's not easy either. And it's all like kind of fraught. The story that I'm working on, which involves my ancestors, and it's a story about a lot of mixed people, right? And I mean, this is Sarah. She was my great grandmother. She was 17 when they escaped from slavery. She looks like a white lady, right?
Right.
And so when I'm thinking about this limited series for TV that we're working on, which is really going to be about mostly this family, I'm thinking about how we're going to be casting them, and I have a feeling it's probably going to be darker actors and actresses who'll say, why aren't there more dark people in this film that has to do with freedom and slavery and all of that? And there will be some, but contextually for this story about this particular family and what their experience is, it just doesn't make sense, to change that.
If we created something about colorism, because I think people don't really understand what colorism is. So when you create something about color, like I wish, other than School Days kind of really honed in on what colorism is, especially, in the Black community. So I think it's funny that we're not having that discussion. We want everyone else to have a discussion about, whether or not who can play, what role. Idris Elba, can he play Batman, or what is it, James Bond? But what we need to do is why we have this confusion with it also within our own communities.
We really do.
Why this year I've had to defend myself as a Jewish woman and as a Black woman. I've had to defend, what I mean, all the different things as part white and part Black. And this has been the thing. I've had to stand up for my brothers and my sisters and my two moms. Like, it's been a year of having to be on that line, sticking up for the rights of everything. And at the same time, I'm going, but we also have to look in our own backyards. You know, we still got a trickling of stuff going on.
That's true. That's true.
You know, in every community.
And I think
None of us are monolithic. That's part of it. Go ahead, Micah.
yeah, but that's monolithic. That's a great word for it. And also speaking of casting and production and visibility and optics, I think what your question about how do we deal with this in our content creation, we are aware that there's always going to be the baggage that the audience brings in with them. Be it that your ancestor Terry in the show, that they're going to cast someone darker because the baggage of your viewers is they can't conceive that a lighter skinned woman would be this, right? I mean, is that sort of the way?
That's a possibility, but yeah, I mean, and I want people to face that, to go, oh wow, I never really thought about that. Somebody who practically looks white was a slave. That's how silly these laws were. That know that it's so ridiculous that anybody could be someone else's property. So, but what I'm kind of worried about is that we will end up casting lots of fair-skinned people, and that dark-skinned people say, hey, you know, like in the Heights, although in the Heights I guess is more authentic because the neighborhood itself requires a representation of darker skin, but there's aspects of this story that don't require the leads to be dark, and so I could see being a dark-skinned actor and going, gosh, I wish this film had roles that really suited me, because I would love to be in it. And I feel that tension, you know.
I'm excited for you, actually, to see that, because I think that we need that. We need to see all of ourselves in all our different rainbow and colors and hues and glows. Like, that's where we need to get to swing back to the middle. Right?
To understand the humanity that comes through all of that array of rainbow of people, and all those groups that you think are this group or that group, they're all human beings. And you know, we communicate on a one-to-one basis to really connect, and the stories that we tell are the places where we do that.
And where it's going to change too are the people who are in the power to make those decisions. Not that you're doing it independently, so to speak, but like, you know, when I go to pitch my series and every person I pitch to is white, you're not, how do I know? Like, you can say my series is great, but give me no feedback. But if you don't take it, I'm thinking, is it because then you didn't get it?
Right. There's always that doubt.
Not within your experience. It's not gang violence. It's not this. It's not that. It's this story, and it's different. And we just keep churning out the same stuff. And that's why, like, I'm excited to hear someone like yourself, Terry, talk about what you're creating, because it's different.
Thank you. And you know yours too.
Yeah. And that's exciting to me.
And like, finally, more stories like this are getting told, I think.
Right. And I think that's what's beautiful about where we're at in all the chaos, is that great creative things are happening and unfolding. And we're looking at our actors and our writing and our processes so differently. And how do we make it universal? How do I see myself? How do I see Micah? How do I see Terry? How do I see Chris? You know, and we represent that.
You know, and you know, Chris, we're talking about Wilson Cruz. You know, for OutFest, we actually did this thing this year for the first time, Out Fronts, which were kind of like a Comic-Con for all things gay on TV. And we did an interview with the cast of the new Star Trek, and they talked a lot about the representation of the diversity of queerness in that. And that's the nice thing about where we are now, with so many streamers and different platforms and audiences that can find their way to material that actually speaks to them and tells their stories. And that's what's really tickling me, is that I think these opportunities are there if we can just keep them moving forward.
Pose. I mean, look what Pose. Someone just wrote that in the questions or comments, like how it just transformed what we're seeing, like the first transgender, you know what I mean? Like it's so beautiful.
Right.
It's so beautifully written on top of all that, you know, I love it because Lotus gets to grow up in a world where she doesn't question that's normal. Do you know what I mean? Like that's normal. That's beautiful. And so she gets, so I'm like, there is it's starting. It just needs, we need to, you know.
Grow the seeds.
Yeah.
There's this thing that Wilson Cruz also said, which I was kind of hesitant to say because I feel like it's so, from want of a term for Bridgerton, burning in a way. But he was saying how a straight actor playing a queer role is award bait. And that's what's happened so many times in the past several years, is that Tom Hanks plays a gay man in Philadelphia. Boom, he's nominated. Rami Malek?
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury,
right.
in Bohemian, he wins an Oscar. And oh, what was his name? Rupert, and My Best Friend's Wedding.
Yeah, Rupert Everett.
Rupert Everett.
I thought,
although he's gay.
Exactly.
And now he's complaining he can't get roles because he played a gay role, and now he can't get straight roles, which is completely frustrating. And what was the Dallas Buyers Club?
Matthew McConaughey.
Right, both of them.
Right.
Listen, I'll tell you a story that I experienced when I was on. So I played a lesbian on the TV show Rude Awakening that was on Showtime. And then every role after that I got offered was to play a lesbian woman. Every single show. And I remember my agent at the time, who was a gay man, said, don't do it. You don't want to be typecast in playing lesbian roles. And I find that interesting because I know today he would not have said that.
Really?
2021, it would have been like, you better go get your money and get your money, girl. You know?
Right? Get those coins. You better be a lesbian for a minute.
Stigma about, you know, plain, you know, that wasn't heterosexual normative. You know, it was like such a big freaking deal. You know, but now I can't anyway. I mean, again, I'm just saying, that's where we're at again.
You can't play Black, you can't play Jewish, you can't play lesbian, you can't play anything. You have to write your own. Write your own.
Again.
Right.
Mike.
Reminded about Rupert Everett, like that's a generation or two ago where it's like growing up with that, and now like, yeah, we have, and that just made me think about all the representation we have with Hollywood and Broadway. Well, Broadway's, you know, it's been gay. Who are we kidding? Really?
It was gay first.
It was gay all along.
All right, guys, I hate to hop in and cut into a wonderful conversation, but we are getting very close to the end. We've got time for maybe just about one question. And one of the ones I wanted to ask you guys and share. So I know in the beginning, we were talking about the importance of hearing voices that you disagree with. Someone mentioned that they are a part of a group in their neighborhood to discuss issues of race and racism, and they want to invite people who may not automatically agree, but are having trouble getting them to engage and be a part of it. And I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on that.
Part of that is in how you're reaching them. I mean, this is my skill set. So part of it is in which you reach out in your authenticity, right? So if you say, look, I know this is strange, and here we are having this conversation, and we really value what maybe you could bring to the group. Like, I think that's the better way than to invite someone, because anytime someone feels they're going to be othered, even if they are the other at the moment, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to go. But if I approach it from a thing like, hey, we're all curious and we're trying to make something good here, and we value, you know, bringing this reflection to the table, I think you might have a better chance in bringing someone, you know, in.
I think that makes sense. And I think it's also kind of a matter of trying to figure out who thinks they're ready for that opportunity. You know, as we started this thing last year, I was sitting in a meeting with someone who said that he had grown up in Minnesota and that he lived around that neighborhood where George Floyd was killed. And his first reaction when he saw the story was, what was he doing in that neighborhood? And he realized that his racism was on display and he had to check himself. And that sort of changed this man's life. You know, this was a white man who's in his 70s who had to really confront his impressions and everything he believed in. So he was ready. He's a person that would be ready to have that uncomfortable conversation and sit in it and know he's gonna have to take some guff for it, some pushback, but not everybody is. And so I think it's kind of trying to figure out who's ready, who on your Facebook feed is reading some anti-racist book and saying, I'm curious, but I don't want to be in a space where I'm going to offend anybody. You know, maybe those are the people you want to really try to reach out to because maybe they're open.
Right.
And I love what we both said, and Rain speaking to that safe space is what comes to my head. Is like when I've had these conversations with a group of friends or here, it's like there's a part of me that wants to say, hey, I might say some wrong stuff. I might try to, because I'm a verbal processor. I'm going to say some,
Right.
I'm going to say some things, and I'm not sure that I believe it. I'm not sure what's right. I'm just trying to figure it out. So just between us, what does RuPaul say? Just between us, squirrel friends. Just between us, can we all agree that this is a safe space without judgment? And I think judgment is a huge part of it because then it invites shame and all the other negative the feelings that come in. So can we just put judgment aside for 20 minutes and to your question and approach the situation with curiosity and openness as opposed to, hey, you can't say that. That's wrong.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right.
Right.
People got to learn.
Shut us
With-
down. We got to stay open. Yeah.
With
go ahead.
love, approach with love.
Love wins all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Well, thank you all so much for being a part of this program with us and sharing this discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed all parts of listening and hearing it. And thank you to all of our participants who joined us today. Please feel free to check out our website for more events for all ages, including more programs as part of our Pride Month celebration, including our Rainbow Entrepreneur panel discussion next Wednesday, June 23rd at 7 p.m. And I will include the link to our programs in the chat. And also, we would love to know what you think. Please feel free to share any program feedback, and I'll add that link in the chat too. And have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
All.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. That was
For
fun.
having me, you guys. Bye.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, see. Go, girl.